Hello, and friends and family and keepers of the faith, and welcome to another blog. This one is number 33, dated 9th of October 2022. And sorry that I look a bit rushed or red-faced or whatever. It's been a difficult morning. My mother has not been very well. And I've had to make sure that she's comfortable before I hit the record button today. So I've been rushing around. I've got to go for my walk. I've got to get some shopping in, all sorts of stuff. And of course, my health has meant that sometimes I fall asleep at weird times, and that means that what I would normally do in regards to a blog and prepping sort of goes out the window. I tend to also like to watch a lot of your guys' videos and live streams, and they all seem to be coming on all at the same time, and so I watched one into the night last night, and all of a sudden Saturday came to an end. And I do apologize if this one is too short or too long, or I'm a bit rushed, whatever, but I do my very best to get these things out. Anyway, we always start off with the news, and remember that the news is just to date this blog, because this is a warts and all blog where we're talking mostly about what's happened this week for me, go back into a little bit of history of me, in the fun sections, answer any questions and so forth. So we always mention the war. So it says here, because I did manage to write down some notes, and that's when you'll see me looking down. Russia is prepping for nuclear war, according to Zelensky. He said they are not ready to do it, to use it, but they start to communicate about it. Personally, I think it's dangerous to even speak about it. Hey, amen. Don't even talk about it. We know that there is always that threat, but oh my God, this is escalating out of control. And after that report that I read, it says that Russia has targeted now a place that I can't pronounce very well, Zaporizhzhia, with explosive drones for the first time. So they're now starting to use drones with explosives and flying them into strategic targets. Like I say, nobody wants this war. This war is causing worldwide problems. It's making the poor poorer, and all of our lives miserable. And all for dominance. Don't agree with dominance, never have. So then we move on to politics, which is also again something I'm not really that interested in, but it's interesting to note that the Conservative Party had their conference, and in a week where that was micro scrutinized, Connor Burns was sacked from the government around a serious misconduct charge. So they've had a very, very bad week. I don't know what this misconduct is. I think it's something, again, to do with social media. I've always said social media is a little bit of a double-edged sword. You can say one thing means something else. It can be misinterpreted. They'll go back on it. It will always look false when they go back on it, even if they mean it. It's a difficult one. Like I say, we've touched upon a couple of weeks ago where I said I don't really like text messages. I don't really like the written word sometimes. It's required sometimes for long distance stuff, or if you've got no money to talk. But if you've got the time to talk, and most of us, I find it very difficult if someone will turn around and say, I can spare only 20 minutes. That in the whole of a week, 7 days, 7 times 24 hours taken away when you sleep, that you're not able to find a time just to have a fun chat with someone. If you've got the time, do it. Hearing a voice is much better than receiving a text. Anything can make you smile. Texts make me smile, but hearing a voice when you only hear one other voice, like in my life it's my mother, it makes me feel loved, wanted, needed. It also makes me think that the person took their time out to, or they were thinking about me before they actually made the phone call. Oh, I must have a chat. You know, that those sort of things make you feel great. If you can do it, do it. A couple of minor ones. Eurovision. So Glasgow and Liverpool were up for doing the Eurovision Song Contest next year because of the Ukraine war. Even though they won it, they can't hold it. I was actually rooting for Glasgow, purely because some of the cities that are in Britain are, I think, overexposed a little bit. But it was between Liverpool and Glasgow. Glasgow were well up for it. In the end, they chose Liverpool. So go figure. Maybe if I'd have had in my brain Liverpool, it would have gone the other way, because I told you a little story where my mother watches the sport, and she swears that when she starts watching any game, the side that she's rooting for will lose because she's watching it, which always amused my father. And then the Moors murders. They've called off the search to find the last victim because of no evidence, which is a great shame. But I mean, the Moors murders. What do the Moors murders mean to me? Well, not that much, because it was before my time. I think about the families that it affected, and so forth, and anything that will bring closure. Again, we're talking about people's feelings here, like I mentioned before about hearing a voice at the other end. Person that's had something shocking happen to in their lives, like murders in their family or bodies that are not found and all that sort of stuff. They look for closure, and unfortunately, in this situation, no closure. And you have to think about that aspect of it, not the how long ago it was. It's all about, I can rest now knowing, you know. And that's that other thing that it's silence helps no one. Knowing helps, because you can close off something in your life. You can and turn around and go, no point going any further with this. It's a losing battle. So in this particular instance, closure would be knowing that they found the body and that they can rest, get on with the rest of their lives. Anything else is you know, you can mention many different scenarios, but closure and knowing futility in something is something that we all need. So that brings that out of the way. And then we move on to the normal stuff. By the way, we got that done in about 8 minutes. That isn't too bad. Shout outs, lots of them this week. I usually talk about what I've done this week at the end, so I'm just going to mention that all of these shout outs are for people that have commented in everything I've done this week that I've done on YouTube, where there's been a comment or a question made. So we've got Wee Bob Art, Denny, Robert's Retro Gaming, LFC Gamer and Vlogs, Colin Jones, Steve's Gaming, Jambon, Colin Ferguson, Martroid, Milfy Swimbuckle, Down the Rabbit Hole, Unboxing Hands, Rocket Bunny, GTB Films, and Rocket Bunny. Now, every single one of those, I'm really appreciative of it, because I've mentioned it a lot of times before that while I'm not at work, conversations are light. Reading things is the next thing that I do after watching something. And anything that makes me think is great, because it takes my mind off of things that are bad that are going on. The things that are going on in regards to me trying to get to work are always a step back. This week I had my occupational health report. What a futile thing that was. Just to talk about me for a moment here. I was supposed to have an occupational health report this Friday, and I've got one next Friday. This Friday was about phased return. In other words, knowing everything about what the problem is and what we can do about it. I had an hour-long conversation. It was very difficult. He, and it was a he, spoke over me. I spoke over him. That's because we needed to get some points across. He wanted to go into areas that I'd already answered, or I thought I had answered, and was bringing things in that I didn't think were worthwhile. At the end of it, he's going to send a report to me, and then in 48 hours after that, if I don't comment on it, it goes directly to my managers. His analogy was that it was a very difficult situation. He understood it. There was no way me going back to work without being medically correct, which means that he took those side effects as being a problem. And then he said that you really definitely need to discuss, go to stress analysis class. And what does that mean? I said to him. And he said, well, where you discuss with management the things that cause you stress. And I said, I've been off work 4 months, and they know full well while I'm off, it's not the stress of the work, it's the stress of the situation that's caused by them. If I talk about it, my blood pressure goes up. If my blood pressure goes up, I'm medically not fit to go back to work. So what are you exactly telling me? And he just said, it's just a suggestion. It's what I will put to management. And I said, okay, but they'll only come back and say, right, when are we going to have these meetings? And then I'm going to be talking about it. It'll bring up all the uproar about how it's affected me, and my blood pressure is going to go up, and I'll be off work again. And I told him that I thought we were talking about a phased return, that you were going to mention to me that I should do reduced hours or work from home more. Didn't touch upon it at all. So I didn't find it very constructive, is probably the best word. I wouldn't want to say it was a destructive meeting. It's just, I don't think it helped. Just really don't. I came away more bewildered than I did when it started. A shame. So that ends that little bit, really, of a rant. And I don't mean to rant, but I suppose it can be looked upon that that's a good point in these blogs. And then we go into the questions and comments. Now, a lot of the comments, if there was a question, I've answered, and that's just purely because of time, or possibly because it's covered somewhere else. Don't look at it that because I didn't read it out, that it didn't mean something to me. Absolutely every single one means something to me. So there's a couple of questions that have come out. Now I'm reading them from my screen here, so if I do look around a little bit, I do apologize. So the first one I've got is Rocket Bunny, and he gave me a lovely comment about some of the things I discussed last week, and he seems to be very interested in my Formula One side. So he wanted to know, as a question, if I can just find it, what are my top 3 Formula One tracks and or races that I can remember while following the sport, and tell any story or reason why for it. So it's a very difficult one, really. Not for the very first track. I can't really talk too much about it because there are certain things that you don't want people to know, like your specific home address or something like that. But I will tell you this. The top track for me is the one that I can attend, and the one that I can attend is Silverstone. And the reason I can attend it is, yes, I'm within 20 miles of the track. Okay, that's not really pinpointing anything, but I can be there in under half an hour. Okay, that means that for many, many periods of the 90s, and in the noughties, I've attended that track, and I even had a friend before I moved to Manchester that did all the networking at Silverstone, which means that he always had a VIP pass, and sometimes he would call me up and ask if I wanted to come along, which was great, and that's where I got lots of signatures. Formula One to me wasn't something. It's weird because it's not one that started between my dad and I. You know, my dad taught me cricket, and I learned the skill of bowling and batting through my father. School taught me football, but my dad introduced me to my first football game where he said, which team did you want to support? And he gave me two options. He didn't give me many. He didn't say you go for anyone. It's just he wanted to take me to the games. So geographical location meant that I only had sort of like two that I could go for, really, and they were Oxford and Coventry. And me being a young boy and not understanding football meant that my favourite colour was blue, so go figure who I would actually go and support. And I'm sure every young lad has got some tale that says that their father introduced them to this, and boxing was introduced to me by my father and all that sort of stuff. Formula One was not one of them. That came about through friends at school, and then they were still friends for you outside school. When you got a job, you learned to drive, you were able to then go further afield, and therefore Formula One and cars just came to me. I mean, I used to have top trumps and all sorts of stuff in regards to all the different cars. So, of course, when you start to then think about the British Grand Prix, it was only really ever at two tracks, and it's been at Silverstone now for many, many years, and that just happens to be down the road. So, Silverstone's the first one. He mentioned pretty much my second favourite, which was basically James Hunt winning the championship in the rain. There's even a film about James Hunt and the 1977 Formula One. And of course, he also mentioned about Mansell. Sorry, excuse me. I'll take a drink, see if it helps. Real product placement this time. So, yeah, we covered a little bit about Mansell. So I'm going to give you one for now, and I'm going to possibly think more next week, because I think Formula One's becoming quite a popular thing to talk about. The 1998 Belgium Grand Prix in Spa. And I'll tell you the reason for that one is that it was during a period of time where Schumacher was winning just about everything. So it wasn't a particularly great time. But I'd met this girl over, through AOL, basically, from Germany. She came over here, I went over there. It's my only time that I'd been to Europe was when I went to Germany. Wuppertal was the place. And she was a big Hill fan, and I was a big Hill fan, so that's how we sort of like got chatting in forums. But that's neither here nor there. Schumacher was winning everything, and in this particular race, the very first turn, literally half the cars collided with each other. It took over an hour to clear the track. I remember this quite vividly. And all but four of the cars were able to be made roadworthy again in that hour. And it basically set off. But it was a very rainy Formula One race. And basically Schumacher was just going hell for leather. I think he had a lead of, must be 20 or so seconds. But then you get, with any sort of crash, you get problems with your car later on, they just manifest themselves. You know, they give in. And I think it was Courtauld that basically had problems with his car. So he started to slow down. And of course, rain creates spray. Spray is bad visibility. And you can imagine what happens. Schumacher was starting to lap cars. So what happens? Coulthard made the biggest mistake he could ever probably make in his career. And that was slowing down but keeping on the racing line. If you're going to slow down, get off the racing line. That's the one thing. So with bad visibility, what happens? Schumacher goes smashed right into the back of him. Destroyed his front wing. And that caused a lot of uproar. But it was an exciting race because it was eventful. So I'm going to mention that one because I do think that was a thrilling race. And Spa is not really possibly my favourite track. But when events like that occur, it then suddenly becomes your favourite track. I'll tell you what I was really excited about, and this is only in the last 15 years, was night driving Formula One. So, of course, we've just had, I think, Singapore just recently, or Japan. Singapore, I think it is. And they do night riding. But the trouble is their track is it's a road track. It's basically normal roads after the race is finished. So there's no overtaking. But a floodlit track looks beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. And so I will have to say that a floodlit track was something that I was very excited about. So I hope that answered that, Rocket. I've given quite a detailed answer for that one. So then we've got Colin Jones. Good old Colin. You know what I think about him. He always gives me detailed, bullet-pointed comments, which I love because it basically separates it out. And I go, oh, yeah, I did talk about that. Oh, yeah, I did talk about that. So he's just been to an event that a lot of my Discord friends have been to, and they've had a wonderful time in Blackpool. I joked with Colin and said, I threatened him. I said, I'm going to put a picture of the land of the plan of my house, and I'm going to put all the stopping points between my living room where my mum is and the toilet where I need to go, and then tell everybody what the stopping points are on my journey to the toilet. Because Discord got full of, I'm on the bus, I'm about 30 miles away, I'm on the train, it stopped all down, and it was absolutely riveting and it doesn't sound riveting, but it absolutely made me smile reading all of this. And on the journey home, it was oh, what a great time. Now I'm on the train back. Oh, I'm sitting next to this person that smells, or we've stopped again, or we're 30 minutes late, I'm going to miss the bus. I'm on the bus, I'm about 3 corners away from my house, etc, etc, etc. And I just thought it'd be funny that I ridiculed it a little bit by putting a plan of my house and putting the stopping points between me getting from the living room to the toilet. But anyway, enough about that. His question to me was, he got home, but while he was away, he found a channel where they were showing the goodies. Yeah, I know about that because basically That's TV is a Freeview channel, and it brought back a lot of happy memories for him, and he wanted to know what I thought about the goodies. Was I a goodies fan, and what were the reasons for me liking the goodies? Well, of course I was a goodies fan. They were sort of like a more middle of the road Monty Python team than anything ever was. Monty Python was shown late at night. The goodies was shown at sort of like 7:30 when it was first run, and then it was shown on BBC Two as reruns at 6 o'clock, if I remember rightly. During the late 80s, early 90s. And the one thing that sticks out of my mind from the very first run, and I'll never forget it, is the Kitten Kong famous episode where a cat grows to enormous size and goes up the telecommunication tower, and the telecommunication tower then suddenly starts to lean and go over, and the cat goes with it, and apparently that won an award at a French TV award ceremony, and it's one of the only episodes that actually is lost. There is only the episode cut, a certain cut of this episode available that went to that competition. The actual broadcast episode is gone. But there are many good episodes of the Goodies. Never really totally understood what the Goodies were all about. They seemed to want to fix things, and they opened up a company to fix those things. But it was all of the slapstick type Benny Hill sequences, if you see what I mean. They did a type of photography where you do everything in small movements, and then you speed the camera, crank it up, and everything then moves along super fast. And that's how they could do weird things like seeing a foxtail go along the ground super fast while they were trying to catch it, and you didn't really see the string that was pulling it or anything like that, because you could do everything in stop motion. So yes, very fond memories, all to the point where I bought the actual BBC collection. And I mention that specifically, the BBC collection, because the Goodies got cancelled on the BBC and they went over to ITV. It lasted one season. It was too costly. It had good ratings, but the ITV didn't want to pay for that sort of money for a mildly entertaining show that they slotted in on Saturday after World of Sport. So it was a bit of a shame, really. But I'll always remember episodes like they did one on advertising, where in advertising everybody lies. And they tried to set up a company where in the advert they told the truth. And I think that they did something with string. Something like that. And the ITV one, I remember the Bigfoot one, where they were looking for Bigfoot. And it was because they were ridiculing Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. See, lots of memories come back with the Goodies. If you remember Arthur C. Clarke, you'll know what I'm talking about. They paid an awful lot of money to Arthur C. Clarke to present a show of phenomenon. I can't even say that. That he never even believed a word of it. You know, like frogs, raining frogs and all sorts of stuff. Whether Stonehenge was a fueling ground for UFOs, you know, that sort of stuff. So that answers that question for you, Colin. Goodies, top notch. The DVDs are out there. Lots of stuff where you can watch it. He did raise a question about he can't get it in his hometown. I did try to help him there. It's a shame. It is on Freeview. What I do know is if you've got something like a Skybox, you can put in the frequency. The best thing to do is to look to see whether there's an app, really, that allows. And I'm not saying go down the pirate route, but there are many, many ways that you can watch Sky in a not legal way, would I like to say. And I'm pretty sure, therefore, that you could watch it by going down that route. Oh, maybe I shouldn't go into that. I'll leave it there, Colin. Jambon, lovely Jambon. Now, as you know, I went to a pinball pinball event earlier this year, and great mate, one of the best days I've actually had, and what a nice guy. He's asked a question, so let's have a quick look. What or who is your favourite movie monster and why? That's what his question is to me. That would be a difficult one when you consider how many films I've watched and how many have got a monster in it, and the same probably for TV. But I'm not going to name one monster because it would be easy. Some people would say Godzilla, some people would say King Kong, some would even say the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. I mean, it can go on and on and on. And then there's Robbie the Robot, and then there's the monster that's in Forbidden Planet and all that sort of stuff. There is no one monster in the film The Thing, but every single one turned into a monster, and the makeup effects that were in that film means that The Thing is probably one of my favourite horror flicks. but it doesn't name a particular monster. The thing is an unseen thing, and it affects its surrounding. It basically is a symbiote of a type. So if I was to name a movie monster, I would probably say the Alien Xenomorph. Probably because Alien is such a favourite film, and Giger's artwork for that film that then turned into the Alien in the films that we've grown accustomed to means that I think it's very iconic, and a great movie monster. So I'm going to go probably, I'd like to say The Thing, but it's probably going to be Alien. Okay, hope that answers that. Thanks very much, Jambon. You always say such nice things. Now we've got who I now fondly call Conveyor Belt Steve, or Steve's Gaming, because he just brings out so many. And last week I told you I was so happy for him to get 100 subs. Yeah, how many of these have I got to do before you get 100? Yeah. It's only to. I tried to make him smile. I can't see him smile, so I go probably too far in one direction. But he's got 2 questions for me. Can you name a vastly underrated UK series from the 70s or 80s? Oh, God. It's a difficult one. My normal answer for an underrated show was The Prisoner, but that's 60s. When it comes to comedy, I used to turn around and say there are so many that only lasted 1 season, but one show that went on for many seasons, or a couple at least, but doesn't get talked about anymore, is Brushstrokes. So I'd say that was underrated, but I also know that not many people talk about the 80s too much, probably because it's not that far in our past. But I remember there was a show called A Kick Up the 80s, which had Kevin Turvey in it, which was Rick Mayall. And I don't get to hear too much about that show anymore. But the most underrated show, I'd go with Tripods. I remember the Tripods vividly in my childhood. It used to be a Sunday drama. The machines looked like the War of the Worlds fighting machines. And to be quite honest, it had all the production values of Doctor Who, which meant it had none. But I watched it every week, and it was one of those things that I look forward to. So I'm going to say Tripods. How's that for an answer? Don't know whether anybody else remembers the Tripods, but I've got the tune, the theme tune in my head now. You get. Anyway, second one is, what was the first game you needed to buy a new piece of hardware or upgrade to run it? And was it worth it? And then he gave the Amiga and a game as his answer. And I'm surprised at that, Steve, and I'll say this as a surprise because your history goes back further than me, because you're older than I am. In fact, when are you retiring? It's just I want to take all your subs away. See how I mean? I go way too far in one direction. I do apologise. But we have to consider here that because of how far we go back, memory is probably going to be the one thing that we bought to make a game work. And I remember I bought a memory pack for the ZX81. But I don't remember buying it for a particular game. Now, I know that I bought the memory expansion pack for my VIC-20, and it was so I could play Jetpack. Now, we talked about Jetpack, Steve and I, privately in a sort of like Discord communication type way, and over YouTube in his comments, because he's just done Jetpack on the Spectrum. The VIC-20 was really something just like the ZX81. You could do very little with it without a memory expansion pack. But most people got away with it because they bought cartridges like the VCS system to play their games. If you were to buy something on cassette, you needed a memory expansion pack. I did buy a memory expansion pack for the Amiga, but I actually bought my expansion pack for my VIC-20 for a particular game, the Jetpack for the VIC-20. So that dates that back to 1983. And your Amiga one would be much later in the 80s, I'm assuming. So I hope that's answered that. Now, I'm not going to apologise again, but the next question is Milfy. And apologies, Milfy, that I had to do a special for you. He's done another riddle. And I'm going to say to you now, I got this one. And I got it easily. But only because of the last line. I'm going to give the riddle out to you guys. It says, the riddle is, in some countries, I am considered the greatest of all jewels. Second line, but once lost, I can never be regained. And this is one of those subversive riddles where, because somebody mentions the word jewel and it's the last word of a sentence, you think of everything that's precious that if you lose, and you think of something that costs money and all of that sort of stuff. No. Once lost, it can never be regained. And you've got to think now, what can you lose that you can never find again? And then you work out in your head, there isn't a thing. You don't lose a tablet that dissolves, and so forth. So the thing that is most treasured in certain religions, and this is where you go down the religion routes, is virginity. There you go. And I got that like after 5 minutes. And only because my brain was wired that one. Possibly the fact that, I mean, there's no big secret on this. I think I lost my virginity quite late. Is 19 quite late? Yeah, I'd say it was. There were people that were, that I discovered that certain people in my school got pregnant while at school. I'd been out of school from 15, 16, so there's a good 3 years of working, and I still didn't. But I remember really that I don't consider myself handsome. I'm quite portly. I was portly at school, but I lost an incredible amount of weight in 1987, 88. A girl I wanted to go out with, and I was trying to impress, only wanted to be friends. I then went over the top. I walked to her house, and her house was 4 miles away. And I walked every Sunday and delivered a letter explaining that I'd still like to be friends and so forth. And one of those mad crush things. And I did that for 3 to 4 months, walking every Sunday 8 miles. And I lost 4.5 stone in weight. Amazing, really, what walking can do. And later on, that walking then turned into something that I did as a daily thing for me to do. So I hope that's answered that, and that's all the questions. Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, guys, for that. Brilliant. So 39 minutes in. What else can we do? So what have I watched this week? Well, the ones that are non-part of my group, Discord and all of that sort of stuff. Not my group, but people I speak to daily, The stuff I've watched on YouTube has been Movie Collector. He did a review of Hacksaw Ridge. A brilliant film, Hacksaw Ridge. And I bought the Steelbook and showed that up in an episode about 4 weeks ago, I think. RMC was talking about the Magnavox Odyssey because it reached its 50th year. Now, I never had a Magnavox Odyssey. Pong was my first introduction to electronic gamery. So that was very interesting, although I've seen many YouTubes about the Magnavox Odyssey, so I didn't really learn anything new. But when you look at the design of the Magnavox Odyssey, its look is very futuristic. It's like a streamlined piece of art, and I think that's what Sony tried to do with the PlayStation. I mean, it's the most cumbersome thing to actually put anywhere, but it's supposed to look like a piece of art, sculptured. You failed with that one, Sony, I'm afraid. Then there's Techmoan. Now, Techmoan usually does things about audio, but he does do other things. This time he was talking about erasing cassette tapes. And this is interesting. If you've ever tried to buy a blank tape these days, they cost a fortune. Do you remember? You used to have the Woolworths advert tell you could buy a pack of 10 blank tapes for $3.99 or something, right? One tape these days costs about £7 on eBay because they don't make them anymore. It's 20-year-old stock. So he came about the idea of, why don't you go on eBay and buy people's used cassette tapes that they've recorded stuff on and they no longer want anymore. And you could buy huge collections of people's tapes and stuff, and they end up costing you something along the lines of about 69 pence each. So then he started to look at devices about how you can erase them, because obviously you could erase them by just going over the top of a tape. But if you wanted that gap, between tracks, then sometimes you could leave a little bit of audio behind. So erasing tapes is a thing. And he showed a couple of devices, I think there were 3, on how to erase tapes. And one of them was incredible. You just slid the tape through one side. It was almost like a magic box. You slid the tape in. It went through, obviously, some sort of magnet, came out the other end. You put it back in the tape deck. Everything was erased. Absolutely everything. And there was just a bit of a background hiss and a sort of a pulse noise that used to go. It sort of went stick, 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 like that. And then he recorded on it, and it was perfect. Brilliant. And then he showed some of the other ones. Oh my God, there was one that was like an iron. It was like a big magnet. You had to plug it in. You stuck this like big iron thing on top of your tape, ran it around in a circle for a little bit, and then put it in your tape player. And there was mixed results with that. Such a powerful magnet. And you could only do 5 tapes, and then you had to turn it off for 20 minutes. So it'd take you quite a while to do both sides of a tape. Anyway, and then he showed one where there's one with an actual erase head on his tape deck, but you have to do that per side. And if you think about it, certain tapes were 90 minutes. So that was 45 minutes each side. And it would take you that long, 45 minutes each side, to erase it. So, no, tell a lie, you could actually put the erase head on, use fast forward, and it would erase. So you could do it in about 6 minutes per side. Yeah. Interesting. Definitely worth a watch. And then, of course, those were the only ones really that I watched that were outside of my group. The ones that I definitely watched in part of my group was Steve's Gaming. He did his 100 sub special. Well done, mate. LFC did his vlog, and he talked about Tomb Raider, and amongst other things. And I happened to mention a comment on that saying that it's a shame a little bit about Tomb Raider because, yes, there is what they call fatigue and non-bright ideas coming in, and the expectation that Tomb Raider was such a franchise and such a high point that it was expected that every year that they'd bring out a new version, and you can't keep that up. And it takes a game like Uncharted years later to then revitalize that franchise. So I was with him on his Tomb Raider discussion. Rob's Retro Gaming did more on his Minecraft, and he touched upon a game called Solar Jetman because that's a Thrust type game. Now, Solar Jetman to me, because the NES was not a thing in the UK for me. Now, I'm not saying that's a thing for everybody, but I don't hear anybody really saying that the NES was a success in the UK. Okay, it got released, but none of my friends bought one. But Solar Jetman is in my Nintendo 10 arcade cabinet in my garage. I know that because I've taken that thing to bits, and it's got the ROMs slid into the slots. They're all very long. They're not cartridges that you plug in. They're actually long PCB boards, and Solar Jetman is on one of them. So I look forward to playing that when I get my arse in gear and fix that arcade machine. So Nintendo 10 Solar Jetman, yes, it's a thing. And then 20th Century, he did his horror stream last night, which is why I didn't prep you git. No, he did great. He did Forbidden Forest, Beyond the Forbidden Forest, in another game, a brand new sort of game which we had immense fun watching him complete. And that's what I watched this week, other than what I watched on TV. And because I mentioned The Martian Chronicles last week, I found my DVD copy and watched that. And it hasn't aged well, but it did bring back lots of happy memories, and the story is still very, very good. It's definitely one, if you remember it, revisit it. If you've never seen it, still watch it. It's interesting. It's just its production values were low. Yes, we're talking incredibly low for the American market, mediocre or medium for the time period in the UK. So we're talking slightly higher than Doctor Who. Yeah. I watched House of Dragon episode 7. Immense fun with that. It's getting very, very close to the end now with 10 episodes. We're at the 7th, so the 8th is tonight. Or if you're watching it very early, or it's going to be tomorrow's broadcast on Monday at 9 o'clock. We will be at episode 8, so not far now. And then I only went back to this because I heard it had Daredevil in it, but I watched She-Hulk. And I stopped watching that at episode 4. This one was episode 8. I didn't look at the ones in between. I watched this one episode that had Daredevil in it. It was fun. Did it make me want to go back and watch the rest? No, it didn't. She-Hulk is not the biggest disaster in the world, because I've seen a lot worse. But it's not for me. It's just not what I'm expecting from Marvel. So I think it's got its fan base. And then the one that I'm going to talk about probably the most in about 2 minutes time, the thing I watched was the Mary Whitehouse Story documentary. And I'm going to come back to it. Now, it sounds the most boring documentary in the world. It was in 2 parts. But I want to talk about it at the end as a topic. So then this week, what have I done? So I did my Del Boy History Gaming, another one. I wanted to go back and see if I remembered the editing bits. I forgot some parts. I re-remembered them. So 3 days has now turned to 2 days doing one of those. And I did Ring King. Lots of happy memories about boxing games in arcade machines. I mentioned all of the ones that I could really do, like Barry McGuigan, or US Gold's Fight Night, Mike Tyson's Punch Out, etc., etc. Ones I didn't mention are more the more modern ones, which are things like Fight Night, or Fight Night Round 2, Round 3, Championship. The 360 very first Fight Night was amazing, because it had this, what they call a slow motion punch effect, where if you hit somebody in a certain way, they did it in slow motion, where you see the punch come in and it goes, and you see their cheeks move and they go, and the sweat comes off of them. And it was amazing at the time, and it was one of the first 360 games I got, and it was the one I completed. So I got all my achievements. And then there's Ready to Rumble Boxing on the Dreamcast. So there's a couple that I didn't mention. But that was great. And then apart from my blog, I did a live stream, and this is another little topic that I want to bring up. I wasn't going to do a live stream. There was nothing on telly. I went to my Steam library and thought, I need to pick a game. And I went down far past A and went down the bottom, and there was one there called Vampire Survivors. What I didn't know at the time was how popular this game is. I thought it was like, it's a 300 meg install, I thought to myself. I didn't even look at the price, I just installed it. Started to play it. And I thought, what the hell's this? What a load of junk. 20 minutes later and I'm addicted. And I thought, I've got to tell people about this. So this is the naivety of me not knowing that this is a popular. So I put the stream on. 6 people came in, started having their little chat. And I was going, blah, 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 this game, move around, blah, blah, blah. And Steve was really, really helping me by trying to tell me what a best way to level up the character, right? So let's go back a little bit. What is Vampire Survivors? All you do is move around a very cramped environment, like it could be a forest with trees, a library with books, whatever. Everything is moving towards you. So you're not in the center, but you're on this landscape, and all that's happening is the creatures swarm in towards you. Their homing instinct is to come towards you. Okay? As you kill them, because you've got one weapon, which fires and you in any direction, basically, because you don't control which way it fires. It's usually the point of that you're moving in. Right? So that means that you're forever moving into the pack of what you're trying to run away from, and then doubling back to pick up the gem that gives you the experience, right? And as you level up, it gives you 3 choices of your next weapon, and it could be a defensive weapon or a weapon. And then there are things what they call passive enhancements. Okay, so the next one could be an automatic homing in lightning bolt, say, yeah. So then that starts killing 2 or 3 of them at a time, and you're basically then going round and round in circles, picking up the gems, level up, etc., etc., etc. And the thing that you don't understand is when you're first playing it, is that greed is good, and that what you should be doing is looking not only for these gems to level up, but you should be looking for these static elements on the map that give you coins. Because at the end of the game, and there will be an end, when you're dead, you'll buy another character or buy a weapon that gives you a start for the next time that you play, and it just goes on and on and on. So Steve was explaining all of that to me in literally one line while I'm trying to play the game. And I was so... This is what happens to me. I was so happy with the game that I then bought it as a gift. And basically the comment I got back about the gift was it was definitely very addictive, but possibly not something that's great to stream, is the comment. And all I want to say to that was, how wrong am I? I streamed that 2 days ago, and already it's had more views than something that I've had out for a week. And it's going up and up and up. I think what we have to understand here is we've got to go back to our childhoods a little bit. And all I want to say about that is that we used to go around our friends, and we used to watch our friends play the game, and then we'd have our turn. Or sometimes you were only there to watch. Oh, watch me play. Oh, look, I'm going to show you this. And then your time runs out, and then you go home. Was that entertaining, or is it boring? What's boring to somebody else is not necessarily boring to everybody. And some people will pick up something that you showed in your stream that they haven't come across playing the game for an hour. And therefore you're picking up knowledge as well. So I was totally wrong. Go out and get this game. It's fantastic. If you look on YouTube and you type it in, there are thousands and thousands of videos on this thing. I didn't know. Who knew? And the nicest comment I got about it was, I think it was from Rocket. He went and bought it while he was watching the stream. No, he actually still had it, but he'd never played it. And he was playing it while I was playing it. And he's absolutely addicted to it. And all I've got to say to the other, what I was mentioning before, don't look down on what I was saying before. The person I bought the gift for loves it. It's just, I needed to point out that it's not a boring stream. Apparently, it's not a boring stream. He, you know, he loved the gift. That's all I need to say. And the reason I bought it, and this is the sad thing about it, is that I get very, very excited about something, and then I want my friends to really enjoy it, and I pick a friend and I choose that friend, and then I think then I've got something to talk about. Do you know what I mean? Then if the person doesn't also find it that way, then the conversation dies. I don't buy friendships, but it can come across that way. It's just that I love talking points, and sometimes I find that I've got a problem, right? I've got a problem in the fact that I'm not entertaining and I don't have anything interesting to say. And so I can't think on the top of my brain what to talk about. So what I tend to do is I find something that could be a talking point, and then I go and over the top. Yeah, all my fault. Everything there is my fault. And I've got to learn to calm that down. So I just wanted to end that everything I've said there was not a derogatory comment, because everything that I've just talked about is my fault. Totally my fault. And you know, I know that everything that I say or give is appreciated. It's just me and my own lack of confidence in me that makes me go in on myself. So all these things, these warts and alls, my fault, nobody else's. Topic: Mary Whitehouse. I'll be very quick because we haven't got an awful lot of time. I told you I watched Mary Whitehouse, and the reason I watched it was I was bored, to be quite honest. And documentaries, again, are something where they can entertain me. And when I saw the word Mary Whitehouse, I went, my God, I haven't thought about that name in a long time. And then I thought about the reason why I knew about that name, and I realised how much she encroached upon my childhood, because she basically took the fun out of everything. That's how I look at Mary Whitehouse, the person who took the fun out of everything. She didn't want me to play games with violence in. She didn't like films with violence in. She was dead against seeing boobs on TV, all that sort of stuff, right? So what was Mary Whitehouse about in this documentary? So she wanted to stop the permissive society, because she goes back to the 60s. She said enough is enough. She wanted to ban porn, ban video nasties, and ban violence in games and restrict violence in TV. That was pretty much Mary Whitehouse. So is there good in Mary Whitehouse? Well, yeah. She wrote and helped the law on child porn. Child porn is disgusting. Anybody that went to the country, said, sign this petition, I'm going to present it at Parliament, gets it to Parliament, and then takes it even a step further and gets it written in law, has got my vote. Okay? And then she tried to do something that I'm against, but turned out to be good in a way. And what I mean by that is she wanted to ban all violence on TV. In fact, you couldn't have a punch-up in a soap. That's violence to her, and that's because of her Christian beliefs. And you know where she was coming from in her cause. She tried to put a complete ban on it. It actually turned out to be a restriction in the end, where there was something called the watershed introduced, where you couldn't see something very, very violent until after 9 o'clock. And it was a compromise. So is there bad in Mary Whitehouse? Well, I mentioned a lot at the beginning. And basically, this is how I look at it. She was naive. She had a naive look at society. Think about it like this. She talks about video nasties and that we shouldn't be able to see things. The 17th century was showing Shakespearean plays of death. And we had 15th century hangings where people would be introduced to violence, even as little kids, at public hangings. You're naive if you're thinking that you can take away an animal instinct. She would probably think that seeing animals kill each other in a wildlife program is violence. This is because of her Christian beliefs. But I just think she takes it a bit too far. She says she has a naive look at society. She's definitely backward look at homophobics. So basically, she didn't agree with gay or weddings or marriages or homosexuality in any way, shape or form because of her Christian beliefs. And we've learnt now to live with what's that got to do with us, and why can't a person love each other in that particular way, you know, male to male, female to female, and so forth. Like I say, I've been accused of being gay. I am not gay. I don't have a problem with anybody who thinks that I am, although I don't like assumptions. Assumptions are terrible, and I've been accused of being gay because people don't see me around women much. And it's quite right. I don't have that many girlfriends, and I haven't had that many girlfriends. Is that because I'm of my sexuality? No. And then she wants to then put restrictions on the written word, which freedom of speech I'm very big on, and being able to say, you know, certain stuff. All that censorship made her more bad than I think is good. And I wanted to bring it to your attention because I'd like to know probably what your thoughts are on Mary Whitehouse that you remember from the 80s and 90s and when you heard that word, because I wouldn't have watched a documentary like that, but I learnt an awful lot from it. And it brought, when I was watching the documentary, I was seeing events that were going on TV that I remember, you know, Margaret Thatcher coming into Parliament, all of that sort of stuff. Magazines suddenly ending up on top shelves, you know, all the documentaries and stuff. They showed snippets of these individual little documentaries and people then talking about it, and it was just very, very interesting. And so I bring that up because I found that something that maybe you guys might want to watch as well, you know, or just comment about your thoughts and feelings on Mary Whitehouse. And then we've got the answer to last week's question. Okay, so I have to go back, not because I don't know the answer, but because I can't pronounce the damn character in the film. So the question was, who won Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor playing the same character but in two different films? And it makes it sound like it's one actor. It's not. It's one character, different actors. Okay? You have to sort of like structure the question to make it that way. A couple of you got it dead on. Some of you were close but no cigar. A perfect example would be Silence of the Lambs, where Anthony Hopkins has played the actor, has played that part twice in two different films. But you got to remember there's got to be an Oscar in both films, and there was an Oscar. It's The Godfather. So there's The Godfather, Godfather 2, Godfather 3. There's a character in it called Vito Corleone, Mafia. Okay, originally played by Marlon Brando in the first film and won Best Actor. But then Robert De Niro played him as a younger man in Godfather 2 and won Best Supporting Actor for the same character. Two separate films. There's your answer in a nutshell. So I've got a question for you this week. The question is, I want to know the actor that said this quote and the film. Okay? The quote is as follows. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to zero. I'll read that back. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to zero. That is a quote from a film, a very famous film, a favourite film of mine. I want to know the actor and the film. Easy one to Google, but remember, this is all just for fun, just for fun. So then we talk about things that arrived this week. I forgot to put them up here, don't I? Okay, so nothing really exciting, but the two films that happened this week were The Steel Book of American Psycho. Not a fantastic film, but an entertaining one, especially if you're looking at psychology. I thought it was a really nice glossy case and so forth. And it's not that bad a film. And then we're entering Halloween, and they brought out the Steel Book of The Cabin in the Woods. So basically, I wanted something for that. I thought it was an interesting cover, all in red. And those were my two purchases. Now, I've already been told my emails already on Saturday saying your film has been sent to you. And so I've got more coming next week. So I think there'll be more excitement in the films that are coming next week than this week. We talk about big box games, don't we? Now, as you know, Mainmeister's my mate, and basically he talked about Dishonored the last couple. I forgot that I bought it. Look, Dishonored. You can get it on Steam at a much cheaper price, but I bought the special edition. Look at that. Look, comes with some cards and stuff. Forgot I even had it. And as you can see, look, the famous Del Boy, and even bloody opened it and installed it. You know, what can I say? I'm terrible. Need to start doing a lot more. And then there's this one that I've opened, and I can't remember playing it. Anno 2070 Collector Edition. Lovely box. Look at that box. Tells you absolutely nothing. And I'm just about to open it now. What's in it? It's got a book, look, which I've never even opened. There's some pictures now. And it comes back to me what this game's about. Yes, that's right. There's the card that used to wrap around the box. So it's one of those city builders. Yes, remember it now. And then it comes with the case and the soundtrack and everything else. I might go back to that. Trouble is, I've got so many games that I want to go back to. But anyway, I was muddling about upstairs, and I found a boxed console. Now, I've bought many versions of this console, and I've still got them now. One's broken. I can tell you that now. I need to fix it. I think it's the fuse. But I found my very first boxed Dreamcast, and it's boxed, and it was mine. This is mine, not from eBay. Great. And right on top of that box was my House of the Dead 2 gun, Dreamcast gun. And on top of that was the keyboard and mouse and a fishing rod. Now, after I bought the Dreamcast, just like I've said before when I was talking about a gift earlier, I bought my nephew a Dreamcast from cash converters because you could buy them now for about £15. This was at the time of about 2002, 2003, 4. They went in their droves to cash converters to get rid of it because the console died a death and wasn't being made anymore. But his then stepfather took it away from him and gave it me back. And he actually, when I got back to my hometown, I found out that the console that he had borrowed from me, my Nintendo 64, he took it away from him and sold it. My own console. He had no rights to do that. I'm so glad my sister divorced him. He's such an ogre. And I had it out with him, and I said, who in your right mind told you that you could sell something that's not yours? He said, but I didn't want my kiddie to play it. I said, gives you no rights. You owe me money. He never paid me. We just basically argued. He went off, and I never spoke to him again. And I helped my sister divorce him by lending her money. I couldn't wait for her to get out of that relationship. And I think that's it. Please take everything I've said with a pinch of salt. I like to list my defects. People out there that I know, respect, talk to. As far as I'm concerned, I don't know your defects, and I only know you as friends. That's what you are to me. And that puts an end to that. hopefully an entertaining show. Thank you very much for watching. Hope the question was entertaining. And see you at the next one. I hope to do some more videos. I hope you find those great. And thank you so much for supporting me. Salute. Bye-bye.